There is one sentence I have replayed in my head more times than I can count, and it's a sentence I never actually said out loud. It's strange how a life can feel full and unfinished at the same time because of one quiet moment that never happened. My name is Thomas, and I'm 81 years old. I've lived long enough to forget entire decades, and yet still remember with painful clarity one conversation I waited too long to have. When I was younger, I believed time was patient. I didn't think of it as endless exactly, but I thought it was generous. I thought it would tap me on the shoulder one day and say, now would be a good moment to speak up. I assumed clarity came with age, and courage would follow naturally after that. What no one tells you is that courage doesn't arrive on its own. It waits for an invitation, and sometimes it grows tired of waiting. The conversation I'm talking about wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a confession or an argument or anything that would have made a good story at the time. It was simple, it was honest, and that's exactly why I kept postponing it. I told myself I was being considerate. I said I didn't want to stir things up. I convinced myself that silence was a form of kindness. Looking back now, I can see that most of the silence in my life came from fear wearing the costume of politeness. I was in my 40s when the need for that conversation first appeared. That's when you're old enough to see patterns, but young enough to believe you can outrun them. I had a family, a steady job, responsibilities that gave my days shape and weight. From the outside, my life looked settled. From the inside, there was a small discomfort I kept stepping around. Like a loose floorboard, I promised myself I'd fix later. It involved someone I loved deeply, someone who had been part of my life for as long as I could remember. We understood each other in many ways, but there was one truth between us that never found its voice. I told myself it wasn't urgent. I said we had time. We always had time, until suddenly we didn't. Years passed quietly, the way they do when nothing explodes. Holidays came and went. Conversations stayed safely on the surface. We talked about work, about weather, about small annoyances, and shared memories. Each time I felt the conversation rising in my chest, I pushed it back down. I waited for the perfect moment, the right mood, the day when everything else felt calm enough to handle honesty. That day never arrived because it turns out honesty is rarely convenient. What I didn't realize then was that waiting changes the shape of truth. The longer you hold it, the heavier it becomes. It starts to press on you in subtle ways. You become careful with your words. You avoid certain topics without even noticing you're doing it. Over time, the silence becomes part of the relationship, and you start mistaking it for peace. I told myself that bringing it up might hurt them. I didn't stop to consider how much the unspoken truth was hurting me. That's something age has taught me. Sometimes the pain you're avoiding doesn't disappear, it just changes who carries it. In my case, I carried it quietly, year after year, until it felt like part of my personality. Then came the moment I didn't plan for. It always comes that way. Illness doesn't ask if you're ready. Loss doesn't check your schedule. One ordinary phone call rearranged everything I thought I still had time for. The conversation I had postponed for decades was suddenly impossible to have. I remember sitting alone after, replaying old moments in my mind, looking for signs that I should have known better. I realized the signs had always been there. I just kept translating them into excuses. I told myself there would be another chance. I didn't understand that chances don't stack up neatly in the future. They appear once, quietly, and if you don't take them, they leave without a sound. Regret doesn't arrive all at once. It seeps in slowly. At first, it's just a thought that visits you at night. Then it becomes a familiar companion. You start measuring time differently. You stop thinking about what you'll do next year and start thinking about what you should have done 10 years ago. What hurt the most wasn't that the conversation never happened. It was knowing that it could have. There were dozens of moments when I could have spoken, when the room was quiet enough, when the words were right there. I chose comfort over truth again and again, without realizing what that choice was costing me. Now, at 81, I understand something I didn't back then. Conversations are not just exchanges of words, they are bridges. When you don't build them, you don't just stay on your side, you slowly drift farther apart, even from the people you love most. Distance doesn't always come from conflict. Sometimes it comes from what's never said. If I could sit across from that younger version of myself, I wouldn't lecture him. I wouldn't scare him with talk of time running out. I would simply tell him this: the discomfort you're avoiding now is smaller than the regret you'll carry later. Silence feels safe, but it leaves questions behind, and unanswered questions have a long life. I don't think about that conversation every day anymore. Age softens some edges, but it returns in quiet moments when the house is still and memories wander in uninvited. When it does, I let it stay for a moment. I don't fight it. It reminds me that love is not just about being present, but about being honest while you still can be. If you're listening to me and there's a conversation you keep postponing, I won't tell you what to say or how to say it. I only know that waiting rarely makes it easier. The right time is usually just a moment when fear hasn't spoken yet. I waited too long, and that's a truth I live with now. My hope is that you don't have to live with the same quiet sentence, the one you replay because it never left your mouth. Some words are meant to be spoken while the person who needs to hear them is still close enough to listen.